Hello, hello. We're now live. We would like to welcome everyone to one of the most expected webinars because it goes over one of the things that seems to be pretty scary for most of the people that we've spoken with, EUDR. European Union Deforestation Regulation. So, as usual, we'll give everyone a chance to arrive. I can already see a lot of people rolling in, but we'll take, let's say, 5 minutes to allow everybody to log in. In the meantime, we'll do our usual warm-up exercise. So first, I would like to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. I'll start with my colleague, Carlos.
Hello, everyone. Hello one more time. Welcome to this session and Happy New Year. As this is the first webinar of 2024. We hope you enjoy it. And that's it. I think it would be a good idea of a warm-up for our attendance to say where in the world are everybody. So hello from Brazil right now.
Hello from France.
Hi from the UK, from Hastings now.
I'm the same as Oliver, but from down in Dorset, if you know where that is.
Everybody in the attendance, please drop your answers in the chat. That way we can see how global you are. All right, as usual, we see a lot of different countries. While we're looking at the replies in the chat, I would love to give Adam a quick spotlight to introduce himself.
Yes, hi, Adam Grant, representative of Double Helix. Really thankful for Orbify for inviting us to come along and speak. I think we've been asked to give a case study for what we're doing for due diligence and explain who we are, and then how we see probably Orbify as a tool for us to help in offering solutions and tools for our clients.
Thank you, Adam. And now, last but not least, somebody who I call my champion fighter, really, our most loved presenter of the Orbify webinars, Ollie, please.
Hi, I'm Ollie. I'm a bit of a regular at these now. I'm an Earth observation engineer at Orbify. So I get involved with a lot of the projects that we have and we are developing. So yeah, great to be on another one of these, talking about a very, very interesting subject. So yeah, looking forward to the responses, and thanks to everyone in the chat for saying where you are. It really helps to know that there's people there and that we're not just talking into the void. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Ollie. Well, now that you've met us, we would like to meet you a little bit. I think it's time to launch our first poll. Please head to the chat. We would love to understand what type of, role that your company plays when it comes to EUDR. So please head to the chat. There's going to be the poll option there. So we're looking to understand whether you are representing traders or operators, whether you're, for example, a trade association or an NGO, whether you're a consulting company that's going to be helping traders and operators to comply, or you're a supplier who is practically trying to figure out how all of this is going to work. The poll is now live. And while you guys are answering in the poll, I've noticed that there has been some, actually not some, but a lot of negative reactions to EUDR from what we call the global south. So a lot of those countries have expressed their concerns with the regulation, basically pretty much calling it discriminatory for their producers and especially the smallholders, which I think is not surprising because obviously from what we know, some of the smallholders just cannot help but cause some damage to the forest. So if there is something, if you have an opinion regarding that, please also drop it in the chat because we would love to know what you think about that. We are at 4:06. I think it would be great to do another quick poll, and then we can hit the road running. The next poll is, how Carlos, which one is the next poll?
Yes. How do you plan to carry out EUDR compliance within your organization? Yeah.
Thank you.
House, consulting company, a mix. If you are exploring options, you feel free to drop your comment in our chat.
So the flow of the webinar is pretty straightforward. First, it will be Adam who will go over his presentation that will cover the holistic approach to the due diligence of EUDR, which will also tie back to EUDR, and he'll also use a specific case study. As usual, we'll take your questions after the end of his presentation, and then it will be Oli who will go to the satellite data part. Again, he'll go over that part of due diligence, and we'll take the questions after his presentation as well. Feel free to drop the questions in the chat as the presenter is speaking. They won't be lost. Carlos and I are marking them up, so we'll be able to attend to those after the end of each presentation. Are you guys getting some echo from me speaking? Because I can hear myself from time to time. No, it's okay. Okay, maybe it's just my computer.
We have yeses. We have yeses in the chat. So.
Okay. I'm gonna hook up an AirPod then.
And before we start, I think we have time for the last poll in this introduction. And it's now available. What do you
Yes, the scariest part. What do you perceive as the scariest part of this regulation? So whether it's dealing with the satellite data, understanding local regulations, doing risk mitigation, or possibly having to look for the new suppliers. We would love to understand that. All these polls are very helpful for Adam and Oli, for them to basically sort of customize the information that they're going to present in their parts. All right, very interesting splits. All right, thank you everyone for the warm-up. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Adam for his part of the presentation.
All right, thank you. Let me try and share my screen. Okay, is that working?
Yep, I'm gonna push it to full screen now.
All right. Well, yeah, as I say, thank you for inviting us to speak. Just a quick introduction who Double Helix is. We're an organization that's registered in Singapore, but we have operations and experience, if you look down at the bottom left, in all of these regions of the world. We have staff in many of these, mainly in Southeast Asia, Latin America, North America, and we have the ability to work in Africa. As I say, we're based in Singapore, staff in Indonesia, and the ability to work in many of these countries. Our focus is on due diligence, supply chain due diligence. Like many other organizations, I see there's consulting companies large on this list of people, so much the same as others, offering due diligence systems, data collection, data management support, and along with now the partnership with Orbify, geolocation data. And we're one of the vanguards in the development of DNA in timber, and our partner and strong partner and part of the organization is Adelaide University in terms of its development of the DNA sampling. And then go on with risk assessments and risk mitigation. We offer all of those services across the board. Obviously, no one organization can do all of those well. So how we structure a lot of our work is in partnership. So we have a strong partnership in the digital realm, which we'll cover a bit. We've got Orbify, obviously, we're with today, IOV42, which is we're developing and help developing input for their new decentralized ledger platform, which should be coming out very soon, and 11 Foundry on their command center, on their digital data management platform. As I said, Adelaide is our scientific hub for testing, forensic testing, offering DNA, isotopes, and anatomy testing. And then the two organizations that offer most of the technical assistance is Double Helix and our partner organization, EnviroSense, which is really focusing on renewable energy and carbon calculations. And I spread my time across both of those organizations. I'm sure most on this call has already listened or understood or trying to get their heads around what the European Deforestation Regulation is. So just a couple of slides to remind us. The EUDR is now an evolution of the EUTR, which now is extending a lot of the scope in terms of the commodities it's covering, and now is asking for all products to be harvested and managed in terms of relevant legislation. The country of production, it's got to be deforestation free, and very importantly, there has to be a due diligence statement along with those. Quick table, just do a quick comparison, showed now how things have moved forward. We'll be moving forward at the end of this year. There's the geolocation requirement of the EUDR, that you have to be able to know where in the world you're sourcing your product from. Indigenous peoples and community rights, free, prior and informed consent, which is something not really mentioned, but it's going to be very important. All of these things have to be considered in terms of your sourcing. Obviously, products have to be deforestation free, and there has to be a declaration, and that declaration is very important, much the same as with the Lacey Act. Other people have done many, many good webinars on this. If you need to understand or get more in depth, I would probably suggest you go to Preferred by Nature's series. They've done a great series of webinars, and they've got lots of material that really gets into depth on the EUDR. So we, moving quickly because we haven't got much time, we've been asked to quickly show some of the work we're doing in terms of due diligence and what we look at and where we think things are going to have to go with the EUDR. Obviously, the work we're showing right now isn't working to EUDR because we're still waiting to see how that's going to work towards mid this year. This is more looking at the EUTR, UKTR, the Australian Act and Lacey. But one of our clients based in Brazil asked us to engage with their suppliers and do a comprehensive data on manufacturing sawmills in the country, and more importantly, look at forest provenance. So part of that work, we start with the risk assessments, which is looking at the higher level risk facets in the country, considering the corruption, land rights, and third-party rights. We look at the inventory accuracy and how the forest management it works in country, the legitimacy of it, and very importantly, the tenure rights. If you look at where we're going to have to consider for the EUDR on FPIC, free and prior informed consent, the indigenous peoples and communities, all of these things are very, very important. And then we did an assessing of gaps in the supply chain. The risk mitigation we looked at that, went on site. Our teams in Brazil, we have a team in Brazil, and we have a very strong partnership with a law firm there. So we did assessments of the forestry and the sawmill, looked at their documentation, looked at the forest management, compared how the forest management in terms of the management plan, the operational plan, the midterm plan, the long-term plan. And then we worked with our partner law firm, CGM Law Partners in Sao Paulo, and looked at how all of this links back into the requirements of the country and how the organization is meeting those, as you saw on the legislation. Everything's got to be done to the laws of the country. And so from that, then we'll be able to create risk assessments, risk mitigation plans, and offer those back into our clients. Going forward, obviously, with the view of the EUDR, a lot of the indigenous people, community rights are going to have to be strengthened, a lot more on the ground understanding of how things are panning out, but also in terms of long-term monitoring and assurance. And this is why Orbify platform is really very exciting for us, and it's going to offer the ability to monitor over the long term is the conversion issues, the forest preservation, and then the regenerative aspects of the Deforestation Regulation to make sure that the forest is maintained. And so towards mid this year, we'll start rolling in Orbify and some of our data management platforms for the work we've just covered there. The second one, all the supply chain work is pretty similar, but they have slight different nuances, obviously, in terms of what the client wants and then what the country you're working in. This one was our client asked for supply chain data and analysis and understanding in Indonesia of their plywood supply, understanding the manufacturing process, and then the forest of origin and how that's managed. Obviously, with the previous one and this in Brazil and this supply chain, they're very two different species and different products. So there's slight differences in what we need to consider. For risk assessment, if you know Indonesia well, they have the SVLK certification, which was the FLECT license in timber considerations. So we work within that, but obviously with a view that with the evolving due diligence, this is going to have to be improved. We supply chain fluidity, the sourcing and the changing in these products, so we have to address that as a risk. And then the biodiversity community considerations. With the changing of supply, the understanding where it is, we had to assess the risks of the species, and more importantly in Indonesia is the community rights, specifically the adat rights, which is the customary rights of the forest potentially owners, if you're going to look at that in terms of the community. With the risk mitigation, we helped with new procedures, training at the mills, training at the log yards and log landings in the forest, and how they should be managed, certification and verification training models as well, modules for what the client should expect and potentially what the supplier should consider when we're offering into the supply chain, and in terms of due diligence and how they should meet some of these claims. And then, of course, with Adelaide, we did anatomy testing and then started doing some work into reference data supply for DNA and other work. So we're using the opportunity when someone was keen to do that and the Indonesian government allows, we would do some reference data collecting. And then again, with the view that Orbify will again future-proof us as we bring these supply chains in and start putting those onto the Orbify platform for monitoring against the due diligence regulation. So quickly, again, talk about how we deliver the science on a lot of this, because a lot of the risk assessment, we do suggest that there is some forensic testing to support the due diligence and the paperwork and the paper testing. And then the site visits that we suggest is also a good way of making sure that the due diligence is met within the supply chain. We have our partner, of course, is Adelaide University, but we also work with Agro-ISA Labs, TuneIn, and we have a strong partnership with World Forest ID now, as much of other organizations do, trying to help them support what they're trying to do in terms of building their reference data. So this helps us all to do our forensic testing. Again, what we offer is the DNA, the isotopes, wood anatomy, and mass spec, which is offered out of the Adelaide University. We have the data management platforms where all of those supply chains work, all of the data which we have, and we're finding now with the new regulations, the EUDR, and the improvement in some of the other regulations that are coming on board, there's a vast amount of data that has to be managed. It's still possible, if you wish, to do it on some of the more standard platforms which you can use in terms of Box, if you like, or Dropbox or others. But we're finding the data has to be managed in a much better way, and the risk assessments probably should be automated to a certain extent. So these data management platforms are allowing that to happen. So partner organization 11 Foundry have Command Center, which I'll get into in a minute. IOV 42 is the due diligence platform, which should be announced in the next couple of months. IOV 42 have been working really hard on the development of their decentralized ledger platform, and again, Orbify. So Command Center, these are some of the screenshots you'll see from that. Obviously, a lot with many of the other data platforms. You have your dashboard, mapping the GIS tools, and what we do offer, and it's great that you'll ever found you work with us on this. We have up on platform, if you wish to use it within our facility, or all of our risk assessments, which are country level and species level. They're kept up to date, and they're available there for obviously a fee for anyone that needs to use some sort of risk assessments, which, because of the very small fee structure in there, we are able to keep those up to date. IV42 is the decentralized ledger. Obviously, with the ledger is immutable and notarized and secure, and so whatever is there fixed, and then it flows through that the whole supply chain if others are going to take it on and use it across their supply chain. So this is a different platform that offers similar things but in a different way. So this is a very interesting development for anyone that's looking to use some sort of blockchain distributed ledger system that they want. They link in very closely with Orbify as well. So Orbify is embedded within this platforms for monitoring at the source level for EUDR or whatever legality system that you have to meet. So we're very keen and excited to be working with IOV also. And then finally, of course, while we're here, much of our work is then going to be overlaid in or supported at the source level with Orbify. That will allow us to use as many of their layers as possibly we can, which we find are useful for our monitoring for deforestation risks and potential, once we have a better understanding on the ground level, the community issues, potentially some community issues. There is the opportunity to maybe work with some communities to allow them to monitor and have a say in terms of the supply chain. That is my last slide. I will leave it there and hand back to the guys in Orbify. Thank you.
All right, Adam. I think we have received already a couple of questions in the chat. Well, one of them is actually satellite data related, so I'll keep it for now. Oh, I received one question in my personal chat. Adam, guys, please post questions in the group chat versus sending them directly to me. What do you perceive as the biggest difference between EUDR and EUDR?
Yeah, as we showed in those slides, it's the requirement that you have to do geolocation, which one, so you have to understand where your goods come from all the way back to the source. There has to be recognition of the community rights and understanding indigenous and communities. Free primary informed consent has to be considered. Obviously, the deforestation element of it as well, where you have to clearly show that there is no deforestation post the cutoff date. And then finally, and very importantly, the declaration. There is a signed declaration, so that will require you to, whoever's going to be an operator or a trader into the European Union, to put up a declaration that you stand by the data that you put up there, that it is truthful, in fact. So that brings in some sort of legality consideration.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay.
Please feel free to add your questions to the chat, guys.
We have one here, Julia, from Flavia.
Yeah, but this is, I think this is a question to
yeah, you mentioned.
Oli, so it makes sense to save it for his presentation. All right, this is, I think, the first time that we haven't gotten any questions. I guess Adam's presentation was... No, maybe you just covered everyone's questions already with the presentation, which is amazing. All right, Oli, then the floor is all yours. Let's switch to the view from above.
Great, thanks everyone. Let's do the first part, which is always the technical challenges. Let's have a go. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
I think there's a slight delay, isn't there? Okay, hi everyone. Can't see anyone anymore, so and everything's gone very quiet. So yes, so as mentioned, I'm going to talk about the role of Earth observation in EUDR. It's an exciting piece of legislation. I know that there is some negative responses to the legislation, but you know, the statistics speak for themselves, right? We have a huge amount of global deforestation, which is responsible, you know, can be attributed to large-scale commercial agriculture, and I think this, alongside with you know, the new revolution and the changes in the voluntary carbon market, I think, you know, it's an exciting time. You know, we're trying to achieve ambitious things, and of course, along the way there'll be issues and problems, and you know, big questions and difficult problems within the EO world as well, of course. But yeah, I think it's an exciting time. So let's see what kind of effect it will have. But I think it's also important to note as well that, you know, it's not just about deforestation. You know, we're talking about things being legally produced and aligned with you know, land use rights and environmental protections and human rights and anti-corruption, things like that. So I think a huge win really for our community who are interested in fixing deforestation. So let's just get rid of that. So EUDR, what do we need? So I think Adam did a great job in touching on the requirements of the EUDR. I think the deforestation-free requirement is a big thing for us, proving that a piece of land was not deforested in order to produce the commodity. I think it is really sort of where we come in strongly, but obviously there's other things that we can provide. And I think, you know, we have to remember that for the first time, you know, the responsibility lies with the operators to show that they've done the due diligence properly and carried out processes properly. So, you know, we need to aim for as high quality information as possible. So we, as part of the EUDR requirement, we need to generate a due diligence statement, which is revised annually. And the first part of that is the information. So we need to provide precise geolocation of the commodities, which can be difficult. I think an interesting comment came up in the chat just now about how geolocation may be a big problem for producers who don't know where the location of their farms are. And yeah, verifiable evidence of deforestation free. Then producers, so operators will have to generate a risk assessment, so assess the risk of deforestation and non-compliance. Now, this is something that everyone will have to do, I think, until we have a jurisdictional or country level map of the risk. And so everyone's in this basket at the moment. We have to provide a risk assessment. And that's something that we've been doing in the carbon market for a while at Orbify. And, you know, we can use layers such as indigenous areas or protected areas and look at the deforestation in the area to help fulfill this part of the EUDR requirements. And then, yeah, the risk mitigation that Adam touched on, that needs to be carried out if there's a risk of non-compliance at all. So this is the kind of area that we work in, trying to develop solutions towards. So it's location and verification, generating information to show that plots of land and farms are deforestation free, and then indicators of risk. So really, you know, EUDR is an exercise in data collection. I think it's sort of key to note that this is like an annual reporting thing as well. So we need to have automated tools that are refreshable, and that's something that we work on. Yeah, Adam says that, you know, Orbify, we do have monitoring tools, so we can continually refresh our analysis and make sure that things remain compliant and up that risk score if things are changing in a plot. So in terms of geolocation, there's a requirement that polygons over, so any plots over 4 hectares are polygons, or coordinates if they're smaller than 4 hectares. So a plot of land is also another thing that I think you have to be careful about, how you define your plots of land. We need to make sure that they have the same level of risk. Yeah, so one thing is stating where the farm is, but the other thing is verifying that the things are happening on that land that you're saying there, so that you're saying are happening. So, you know, there's not always registries that you can use to back up your claims. You know, in Brazil, for example, I think there's the car registry, and there's others around the world, but they're not accessible for a lot of places. So one of the solutions that we've been working on is trying to use mobile applications so that farmers can tag the locations of their farm. They can walk the boundaries of their farms, and they can tag crops using photography. And we hope that this will become a useful tool for producers who are trying to map their supply chain and locate where their farms are. So yeah, this is something in the pipeline for us. We're quite excited about the potential of this. So yeah, please reach out to us if you're interested in this tool. Obviously, there are other layers, data sets made available that show the location of some of these commodities. Some of these commodities are easier to observe than others. And, you know, it may be that commodities such as palm oil, which are potentially easier to pick out using satellite imagery because of their perennial nature. You know, I think anyone who's seen an image of a palm oil plantation from space will recognize that canopy instantly. Things like coffee, I think relating to Dr. Flavia's question, you know, very difficult crop to monitor or locate if that coffee is grown in the understory. And yeah, there's somewhat limited mapping of this crop as a result. So verification of certain crops can be more difficult. Soybean, for example, you know, often huge plantations kind of recognizable from when you zoom out, but can be accompanied by other crops. So, you know, tools are needed to really map out where this is happening. And yeah, this relates to this requirement to segregate compliant and non-compliant crops from each other. And I just think, yeah, it's such an important thing to be able to map out where these commodities are coming from, and seeing if these things are properly segregated, which is a huge challenge for us, really. So here's one of our oil palm data sets. Here's the image, which the recognizable sort of, it reminds me of a honeycomb kind of thing, structure. Yeah, you can see that this is a plantation that was there in 2019, so probably compliant. So oil palm, I think, is quite well set up already due to previous efforts to try and make palm oil free from deforestation and things like that. Yeah, here's another one of our soy planted areas, which we have a timeline for. So this is a really useful data set, which can be used to automate the process and verify that things are happening on a piece of land, and how that extent has changed over time. And it's quite granular, so we have a quite high resolution data for that, 10 meters. So another aspect of this is the no deforestation requirement, which when you say it, it sounds quite simple, but there is nuance to this. It's slightly trickier than it sounds. I think people are aware that the definition of forest is following the FAO definition of forest, which is trees higher than 5 meters and a canopy cover more than 10%. And in some areas which are seeing quite considerable transformation to agriculture, it's not quite appropriate. And we also see that, you know, degradation is part of this assessment. So yeah, we need to ensure that we have the best quality information as to how much deforestation is happening and if trees were previously deforested. And there's, I think, also mentioned in the chat, there's difficulties with, tree cover is not always forest. So digging into these criterions is really key to understand what is required and what are the limitations of those requirements. And I think there is a requirement on us to go beyond those as well. So I think as well, whilst the responsibility is on the operators to show that it's deforestation free, the Joint Research Centre and Copernicus are providing data sets that we can use to demonstrate global forest cover. And there is a global forest cover map which has been provided for 2020, which can be used in a 10-meter resolution. And I think a technical assessment for this data set is going to be made available in March. So yeah, we'll look out for that. But already we can be aware of some of the limitations, which I think are kind of common with global data sets. In certain areas, the difficulty of separation between tropical drylands and shrubs is difficult to measure. Overestimation of forest cover, which when it overlaps with commodity crops such as palm or coffee or rubber. So yeah, there's all of these issues to look out for. And so, our job at Orbify is to provide sort of scalable solutions that can provide as much accuracy and flexibility as possible. So our approach has been to basically provide as many data sets on land cover as we can, including the data sets where the 2020 forest map has been derived from. And so you can go and verify the data that you've seen and visually assess, does this look right against the canopy height, for example, and aim for the best quality deforestation map that we can find. I think I'm rapidly going through these. My time has stopped on the thing, so I have no idea how long I've been. So also we have the requirement to assess risk, and I think Adam talked already about the risk assessments that they're doing, which very much requires people to be on the ground talking with people. But there are certain things that we can do from a remote sensing perspective. And we do have a variety of risk maps. The risk of deforestation from ongoing deforestation fronts is something we have our own risk maps for. And if we combine that with maps of indigenous territories and protected areas, we can sort of automate that risk score and hopefully provide a useful tool in assessing at least a good part of that risk early on in the EUDR due diligence statement. So yeah, here's just a demonstration of some land that was being converted to soy between the years of 2020 and 2022. And apologies for the color scheme, but this was occurring within a indigenous territory. So this is a non-compliant plot of land. So I think unfortunately I went through that quite quickly and missed out some of the points that I'd written to say, but I'm sorry about that. But the conclusion is, there's a lot of responsibility on us to provide the best quality data, and I think that's something we need to strive towards. I think we need to strive towards tools that are open source and scalable and as high quality as possible and possibly cheap. And we know that there are solutions to verify that things are deforestation free, and we just need to be aware of those limitations which occur, which are higher in certain areas and worse for certain commodities. But yeah, this is just the beginning, and we hope to do more at scale as much as possible. So I'll go back to I can't see anyone, so I'll just go back to the thing. and I'll stop sharing. Apologies if that was very fast. I heard myself accelerating as I was going.
That's okay. Thank you, Ollie. As usual, very insightful presentation. In the meantime, we have gotten quite a few questions on the chat, and a lot of them actually for Adam. So, Adam, you are not off the hook yet. We'll take the questions now. I would like to go back to one of the first questions posted, and that was from Dr. Flavia. She had a question about some false positives when it comes to large consumer packaged goods companies that have publicly expressed problems with false positive in relation to the deforestation or degradation alert systems that currently exist on the market. How have you managed the challenges of discriminating between tree-based commodities such as coffee, natural forest, plant forest, and agroforestry systems? So, as you know, guys, we rarely promote ourselves on our own webinars because we'd like them to be more educational, but I would love to take this an opportunity and answer this question myself. So we have our own proprietary algorithms that we have trained using ground data. We also use various sources of data to make sure the accuracy of data is the highest that can be. And we're also working with some governmental data to make sure we have a specific mechanism for the recognition of the crops that will help us have pretty high, I guess, low rates of false positives when it comes to distinction between forest and non-forest. Ollie, hopefully I made you proud with my answer. If you want to add something to that, please feel free. Otherwise, I am going to take the next question, which is actually for Adam. I see Ollie's not unmuting himself, so we're going to go to the question. How extensive does the community rights portion need to be in the due diligence process?
Yeah, good question. It's down to risks, obviously. So each supply chain is going to be different. So if you're buying from some part of the world where this isn't a risk, so it'll be less. But if you're going to be buying from your sources coming from an area in the world where there are serious risks in terms of community rights, then it should have a higher weighting within your due diligence system. What that looks like will be determined from the country you're purchasing from. Each country is going to have different issues that you need to understand, different regulations and laws, and depends on which sort of community you're dealing with as well. Those are going to be different. So you take Indonesia, for example. As I said, you have the adat rights, which is customary rights for the indigenous peoples. Say you're in Kalimantan, those are going to be different to communities that are in the forest area as well. So you're going to really have to, if you're going to do it well, you're going to have to understand all these different nuances. But again, it's down to risk and what you think you need to do. If it's low risk, or you think you have an area that's already done lots of this work, be it certified, if it's FSC certified, EFC certified, you can rely on a lot of the work that's done there in terms of the auditing of a company's done its own due diligence in terms of community management. You could look at their management plans if you have access to those. So there's many different ways you can do it. And in terms of criteria, what you're going to look at again is going to be determined by what the issues are on the ground. Again, if you look at Indonesia, if you're at a natural forest or plantation, you're going to have different issues around community rights and livelihood planting, the tanaman kehidupan, and things you need to understand that the profit sharing where a community has rights to, and all of these things should be understood well. Sorry, rambled on. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Thank you. The next question is for you again. Which risk indicators and verifiers do you apply for FPIC and further social requirements? What is the useful evidence that can be remotely verified?
Yeah, again, much of I think I touched on much of that. On an FPIC and others, the operation ideally should have free prior informed consent or some sort of consent because of these regulations have come in before these considerations were put in place. The forest operation should have worked with the communities to get some consent for the use of those rights. And again, it's going to, what criteria and what indicators you have are going to be different for each different area, country, resource, and type of community. So it will be up to someone within the supply chain to understand what those are, map them out, and make sure that they're met. Again, down to risk. If there's not very much risk in terms of impingement on the communities, then less work needs to be done. But if there is a lot more risk, then the supply chain, all actors within the supply chain should really understand that and make sure the communities were addressed, the community issue were addressed. In terms of remote sensing, it's going to be very difficult to pick any of that up in remote sensing work, obviously. But there are layers that you could at least identify where the potential of risk is, and that will guide you to how you should do more on the ground work.
Thank you, Adam. One more question for you. As far as the legality component is concerned, would certification cover this, especially in terms of indigenous rights?
Yeah, it will help, obviously, and it's going to help greatly for people to have transparency in the source. If a forest isn't certified, it's going to be more difficult to get that data if a company hasn't really addressed those. If it is certified, then obviously the issues around a certain level of legality understood and audited. And if you're certified, obviously against FSC or PFC, mainly, FSC is quite strong on this in terms of some of the criteria there. The forest operation that's certified and audited will have to address the FPIC and the community rights and indigenous rights. And so you could rely on that. But again, how the regulations are written, you can't use it as a green channel. If it's certified, you still have to do your own due diligence. But again, if it's certified, then you're looking at risk, and it's down to risk, isn't it? So you can say the risk is slightly less because it is certified, so you assume that all of that work has already been done, and it should have been done because it's been audited.
Makes sense. One more. Adam, you made a mention of supplier declaration. Could you please elaborate on that?
I assume that's what it is. That's still being developed by the European Commission. I know they're trialing it at the moment in terms of how those declarations are going to work onto their platform and system, how they would upload them and allow companies to make those declarations, and in what format they'll be. We're still waiting for that to be developed and passed to the market so they fully understand. I know they're trialing it, so hopefully this is going to come out pretty soon.
One more question I just noticed. Has anyone provided an actual example of documentation which would make up a submission to EU customs?
Yeah, that's much the same on that. The declaration form, we're waiting to see what that's going to be.
Okay, I think we just took all the questions that were directed at you. Ollie, you're the next one up. The first question is, I heard that Orbify can provide 2-meter resolution optical imagery on a monthly basis over Brazilian country. Isn't that true? Extremely interested to know more.
I think it's in the pipeline. I think it's, yeah, we can provide higher resolution optical imagery if it's requested. It's not something we kind of offer as in our main products, but yeah, I guess we can do that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next one is related to a presentation. So the question is, how about cocoa? Because we have been facing the same issues that you presented for coffee.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting avenue for development. We are reliant on a lot of external data sets who have mapped these things for us. And then there's a certain level of cross-checking we can do. As you mentioned, we have our own forest non-forest algorithm, which can detect forests using sort of local attributes and local data and this often provides higher quality maps than the global data sets that are available, which we use as our first step, our first stage. So often these can pick out different types of forest a little bit better than the global maps, but there are still huge challenges in this area. And I think actually one of the things that the EUDR will do is definitely accelerate the development of these tools. Hopefully they're made quite open source so that people can see what goes behind them and how they can be used properly. I think one of the things that I think was mentioned in the chat is that accuracy is not something that is often reported on, but is often boasted about. So, we know there's a lot of people out there saying that they've got the best maps, and what we try to do is provide as many uncertainty layers and as much information as possible so that things can be checked as possible. So plenty of development to be done, but for now we don't have the magic bullet solution for that particular problem. So I hope that helps. Well, it doesn't, does it, objectively, but
Thanks, Ollie. Next question is, how is Orbify verifying registering compliance with local legislation? The answer is very simple. We do not do that. We do it through our partners, such as Double Helix. So they provide that part of the service, and we just simply deal with the remote sensing data. Next question. What do you understand on the ground truthing? Do you have teams in country to engage producers, discuss conversion incidents, and verify this was illegal under EUDR? Ooh, that's a challenge question to my answer to the previous question. All right, I'll try to answer to the best of my knowledge. So I do know that we work with either clients or partners in certain regions to receive actual verifiable data from them from their fields, either, for example, they're an NBS developer from their forest that they're conserving or regrowing, or from some of the plantations to make sure that the data we're displaying in our tool, the remote sensing data, is actually accurate. And if it's not, we're combining with the ground truth data, which is basically the data that we get from in field from either clients or partners. And this is exactly why we actually released the beta version of our mobile app that lets people from the ground very straightforwardly upload the data to either challenge or verify the data we're seeing from the satellites. Ollie, please feel free to complement the answer if I have not covered that.
Done a great job. Thanks, Leah.
I'm just reading the last comment. I'm not sure if it's a question or just a comment. The RAD alerts are not always optimal, accurately delineating disturbance shapes, especially for small scale disturbances that are. Oh, okay, sorry, that's just a comment. That's not a question. I think so far. Oh, yeah, sorry, that was a question. The question: what about using RAD? That goes beyond the scope of my knowledge. Ollie, would you like to take that?
Yes, I think there's a few different sources of deforestation alerts that we can use. We don't think we currently use RAD as part of our system, but they're not always available for all areas. But yes, another complementary source. I don't know if the person who asked that question was reflecting on the need to distinguish between different crop types or not, but yeah, there's quite a lot of resources. It's just about how to manage that information, know where the limitations are, and synthesize it together so that you can provide the best quality information you can for the report.
Okay, thank you, Ollie. I think we've reached the end of the questions, and we're practically at time. I would like to thank both of you for taking time today to present. I would like to thank the attendees for showing up and putting all the questions in the chat. I think it's been a pretty interesting discussion. As usual, guys, so we're going to release the recording on the next day. So if you would like to rewatch it, share it with your colleagues, do whatever you'd like with it. You'll get it tomorrow. Carlos is also going to momentarily post. Oh my God, he's even faster than I speak. So he posted. He's posting the links to connect with Orbify and Double Helix on both the website and the social media. Preferably LinkedIn, of course, and Adam's and Oliver's links, so you can connect with them personally. As usual, if you have any questions, you can simply reply to the recording email with the recording, and we'll get back with you. Yes, there will be a link to watch the webinar tomorrow. That's what I just said. Thank you, everyone, again. And we hope to see you in our next webinar, which is going to be dedicated to the rapid assessment of carbon projects, which is going to happen in early March. You'll get the announcement next week. So stay tuned for that. We saw that there were a lot of nature-based solution developers here today. Hope you enjoyed. We would like to know why that was of interest to you guys. So if you would like to share that feedback, please feel free to email us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.